I think for Dr. Hassan.
ننتقل الآن إلى الجلسة الثالثة من هذا المنتدى، والتي تحمل عنوان نشر وتطوير الوقود المستدام والمنخفض الكربون محليا، وسائل الدعم والتنفيذ. ستكون هذه الجلسة مساحة حوار حول كيفية دعم وتعزيز استخدام وقود الطيران المستدام وذي الكربون المنخفض على المستوى المحلي، من خلال تبني السياسات الفعالة وتأمين التمويل وتقديم الدعم للبحث العلمي وتطوير القدرات. يشرفنا أن يكون الدكتور راشد الحجري من جامعة السلطان قابوس المسؤول عن توجيه هذه الجلسة. الدكتور راشد هو رئيس قسم الهندسة البترولية والكيميائية وأستاذ مشارك في جامعة السلطان قابوس في عمان. حصل على درجة الدكتوراه في الهندسة الكيميائية من كلية إمبريال لندن في عام 2010. تتضمن بحوثه إنتاج وتحويل الطاقة واحتجاز واستخدام ثاني أكسيد الكربون وتحسين العمليات، كما يعمل كاستشاري لصناعة النفط والغاز، مع التركيز على تعزيز استرداد الزيت الثقيل ومعالجة الغاز الطبيعي وتحسين كفاءة الطاقة. حيث ستسهم هذه الجلسة في تقديم نظرة عميقة حول أهمية تعزيز نشر وتطوير وقود الطيران المستدام وذي الكربون المنخفض، بالإضافة إلى الطاقات النظيفة. تناقش في هذه الجلسة مواضيع رئيسية، منها كيفية تعزيز نشر وتطوير وقود الطيران المستدام والمنخفض الكربون والطاقات النظيفة، وسيلقى الضوء على كيفية تأثير البحوث الأساسية في ابتكار وإنتاج وقود الطيران ذي الكربون المنخفض من خلال مبادرة آرتشي إنيشيتيف، بالإضافة إلى استعراض آفاق المضي قدما نحو وقود الطيران المستدام والوقود ذي الكربون المنخفض. وسنتحدث عن كيفية تعزيز البحث العلمي وعمليات الإنتاج لوقود الطيران المستدام وذي الكربون المنخفض في سلطنة عمان. ندعو جميع المشاركين إلى الاستفادة من هذه المناقشات الثرية والتبادلات البناءة، لكي نعمل معا على تعزيز ودعم هذا المجال الحيوي والمهم.
Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. Inshallah, I will try to do my best to make sure that we will finish exactly on time. I missed my lunch yesterday, so I'm planning not to miss it again today. I hope you are energized. You had a good break today. There is a very nice coffee outside. The line is usually long, but it's worth it. I believe we heard a lot about the utilization of SAF, the decarbonization of the aviation sector, and what we need to do today, during this session, is basically how can we expedite all of these ambitions and all of these plans. About 3 weeks ago, I was participating in the World Petroleum Congress in Calgary, and among all the strategic sessions, everyone was talking about the 3 enablers for expediting the energy transition, which I always like to call them the TIP, the TIP. The first one is technology. The second one is incentives or investments. And the third one is policy. So I believe these are the tip of the spear for making sure this initiative is successful. I will start by inviting Ms. Jane, which you already heard from her twice or three times today, so I think I don't need to introduce her. Again, the plan is to make sure that we finish exactly on time. So please, Ms. Jane, the floor is yours.
So hello again. I'll have now, I think, an opportunity to finally provide you with a more structured presentation on what we are doing in ICAO. So our moderator just talked about technology, investments, and policy. And we have a little role in each one of those in ICAO in really facilitating the action to expedite the deployment, development, deployment, use, commercialization of cleaner energies. So, so I have highlighted in my opening address yesterday, and I mentioned it this morning as well. In ICAO, we are UN. A lot of people confuse us with IATA, which is the airlines, but ICAO is International Civil Aviation Organization. We are united. Our constituency, they are states. We have 193 states that are members of ICAO. And we are a specialized agency for aviation. All matters related to aviation, including environment, is under ICAO. And our mission is really to serve as a global forum of states in international civil aviation and work towards a shared goal for an efficient, safe, secure, and sustainable air transport sector. Environmental protection is one of our key objectives, and I'm pleased to say, that I've been now in ICAO for 25, almost 26 years. When I arrived in the organization, environmental protection was definitely the lower of the priorities that we had in aviation. 25 years later, all considered climate change, which is part of the environment portfolio, is considered the highest priority of aviation. So it's what we call priority focus area, and it has outreach in the entire work that we do. So I also mentioned before, we work not only with climate change, but we also work on noise and local air quality. In fact, we have started with noise and local air quality. We are a part of the Convention on International Civil Aviation that we call Chicago Convention. Annex 16 is entirely dedicated to environment, and we have 4 volumes, one for noise, one for local air quality, one for CO2 standards, and the 4th one, which is the newest one, on CORSIA. So the session of the ICAO Assembly, just over 1 year ago, member states reached this long-term goal, LTAG, net zero carbon emissions for international aviation by 2050. That was big. And the resolution on LTAG, I asked the ICAO Council to continue to assess the progress on the development and deployment of SAF, LCAF, and other clean energies. And they asked to do that, and monitoring that progress through, among all others, something we call the stock-taking process. And we are trying to take stock and to look forward into this energy stream through 4 pillars, which are the global accepted environmental standards for fuels, the adoption of policy and goals that can facilitate the deployment, as our chair was mentioning, capacity building and assistance is the cornerstone, and of course, information, which is outreach so people can understand aviation issues, and also a sharing of best practices with our member states. So when we talk about environmental standards for SAF, we are international aviation. So when we put standards, they have to be globally accepted, which is not easy. That means that we have to have 193 states and around 80 international organizations saying something about that standard before it is approved. We do 2 rounds of consultations. It's really not an easy task. But I can assure you, once that comes out, it's globally accepted and it is implemented. Our implementation with our standards is very high. So we first start looking into standards for cleaner fuels in the context of CORSIA. So let me explain very briefly. CORSIA, it's a global offsetting scheme, and part of CORSIA is, so basically how it works is you have emissions. One operator has emissions. So an airline flies during a year and has emissions, right? We had put a baseline in 2019, 2020. I'm not elaborating there, but there is a baseline around 2019 levels. And then after, if you're flying and your emissions are ahead in that year of the baseline, then you have to offset that. We want you to do everything within aviation, so better aircraft, better operations. But if you did everything and you could not get there, then you have to offset. And there are many rules to offset. But you can offset by buying emissions units in the carbon market, but you can offset also by using sustainable fuels. And to use sustainable fuels, we had to put an entire range of guidance and life cycle assessments and a lot of things, so that it is possible to say this 1 ton of CO2 is equivalent of using that amount of SAF, let's say, basically to simplify a lot. So it was in the context of CORSIA that we in ICAO had to get involved with standards for fuels, clean fuels, life cycle assessment, etc. So we have one of the annexes, I told you, it's CORSIA, and that annex is where we had, it was adopted in 2018, it's very recent, and we have defined there what are CORSIA eligible fuels, what we call CEFs, which include both sustainable aviation fuels, renewable waste derived, and CORSIA low carbon aviation fuels. And you know, when you say SAF, when you say LCAF, those are terminologies that we invented in ICAO when we were doing that regulation, and now this is spread in the regulations all over the world. So it's super interesting. Over the years, so we have developed the CORSIA, and part of it was the sustainability criteria for the fuels. Why? Because we said, you know, it's not someone coming and say, I did a green fuel here, and the value is that. That doesn't fly. You have to certify your fuel. You have to pass a criteria. If it doesn't fulfill the criteria, then it's not accepted for CORSIA offsetting. Okay, so it's much more complicated. So over the years, developing CORSIA, we started with that criteria. First, we had only 2 criteria, which was basically the amount of greenhouse gases. You know, it has to be that amount, and the amount of CO2 that you kept on the soil. But then we expanded those themes for 14 themes. Remember, I said it's not only environment, it's economics, and it's social. And so those 14 themes that are criteria for the fuels include also economics and social themes. So now we have 14. So if you certify your fuel, you have to go through that certification with 14 themes. So also we had to develop some methodologies for the life cycle emissions values. So you can only use those values when you quantify, when you calculate how many, the volume of fuel that relates to the 1 ton of CO2 that you are deducting, right? and different productions, and you have seen so many productions here these 2 days. Different feedstocks, they have different values, different processes, they have different values. So it's very complicated. So we have those approved courses sustainability certification schemes, and we have already gone through those certifications for batches of SAF in 9 different opportunities and from all over the world. We had from China, from Netherlands, from China, from the US. So it means now that everything is ready. People are already actually doing it with the criteria, with the life cycle assessments, etc. So if I now talk about the policies, so I talked about the standards, then the policies. That's the second stream, the policies. So everybody that produces fuel saying, I need the policy signal. I need the policy signal. So we have really, after we had the LTAG net zero, we have put a lot of efforts, and we had a big study underpinning that LTAG goal, which was the LTAG report, and it was done by our Committee on Aviation and Environmental Protection. Imagine 300 of the best experts in the world working 2 years non-stop to produce that report, but the end of the report said it's feasible. Assembly, you can decide because it's feasible for the sector. And the second thing it says is we have operations, technologies, and fuels will deliver more than half of the response you need to reach your LTAG. And, that was very important for us. And then we had, as I mentioned, we will have the CAF3 at the end of the year. It's not the first time we have that. We have CAF1 in 2009, CAF2 in 2017. In CAF2, we already put forward what we call the vision, 2050 vision, but we didn't have a number. And they said, now, next time you have this conference, put a number on it, quantify it. So in the first vision, we just say increasing amounts of sustainable fuels. Now we want to put the amounts. And for that, we have to monitor it, right? So we have been looking into all those policies, things that we can do. Let's see how we are going to get there in the next conference. But, we encourage that each state put forward its policies. We have seen a little bit of how Oman is going about it, but it has to be related to its circumstances. But what we could do in ICAO is to put together what we call a toolkit. So we have produced some documents, some literature that allows us to talk about the toolkits. And we have guidance, those are guidance documents. They have a spread out of policies that you can take from and assess what you want to do. We also have some rules of thumbs, and what you see here is some information from those rules of thumb. You can see how much it costs, the volume you need from the completely different feedstocks and the completely different processes that you can have. All that documentation is freely available in our website. So I talked about a cornerstone, and really it's our spine in doing anything for cleaner energy, which is capacity building. And we are very proud of a program that we have put together to support that in ICAO, which is called ACT SAF. So it's not only for states, it's for industries, for financial organizations. I'm very pleased to say that Oman is part of it, and any of your institutions can be part of that. We have series this week. I think on Thursday we will have one that was talking about accountability of systems. Some of the book and claim systems will come and talk about what they are doing. So it's people that are doing things, talking to you on how they are doing things and explaining. So states are involved, industries involved, financial organizations are involved, and it's very important. We also have templates for feasibility studies that are very important, so that everybody does the feasibility studies for SAF in more or less a harmonized way, so we can connect and see the potentials all around the world. Capacity building just gives a hand to those that want to start, and they are in different levels. So we provide that capacity building in different levels. We also have donors, and we have some grants where we take that grant and we do feasibility studies in states that request that, but you have to be part of the ACSAF, okay? If you're not, just join. Hydrogen will be one of the upcoming series. Now, oops, I think. So if I continue a little bit with ACSAF, then you will see something that you want to look at, which is the trackers that we have in ICAO. So remember I talked about monitoring. We're monitoring constantly what's happening in aviation and sustainable fuels. And you can see those drops over there. It's how many feasibility studies have been done, how many events are upcoming all over the world. You can see a series of ACSA there. You just click and you can get the information. So there's 1,000 things that are being done under the ACSA that are really, really, really very important. The next one is financing. And we have a lot of publications and we have a series of contacts with financial organizations because we want to facilitate access to financing by the industry. And that's very important. That will be a challenge. We need a lot of money and it's not going to be cheap. And we have to have the right and the access to that investment, right? And we had in the previous panel issue, why are we not contemplated in the investments? What's wrong? Why aviation's not there? A lot of it is outreach. A lot of it is our industry really sending the right signals. And finally, I'd like to talk about outreach. You saw the trackers again out there. Anyone can understand the state of things right now. If you click in each one of them, you can see a map and see how it's all over the world. We will need everybody producing stuff. We'll need all the methodologies. We'll need all the sources. And that's why we are spreading the different kinds of technologies, feedstocks, approaches, because you will need to be part of it if we want to reach our target. So cooperation will be big. And last but not least is CAF3. This is our opportunity to show the world and put forward a policy framework that will help each one of us to reach that goal. So we will include all the aspects in that policy, all the 4 aspects I just mentioned, the sustainability criteria, harmonization, access to financing, not one single silver bullet. All of that will be part of our discussions in the next CAF3. And I want to see you all there participating, giving your views, and constructing this amazing future that we'll have with clean energy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If you just wait for a second, I have one question for you regarding basically policy and technology development.
Yeah.
What is missing in the policy that most probably you already know that Oman is working in the policy, maybe already almost finalized. What is missing there regarding technology and innovation in this sector? Or basically,
you
what
are
should
asking
they
me
add?
in Oman's policy or in ICAO's?
What should Oman consider in order to promote technology in this sector, since the price is still high? Eventually, the price will be forwarded to the consumer. To avoid that, we need to reduce the price. There has to be some policy involvement in order to promote technology development.
So you be flexible is my first thing. Don't put forward a policy that will impede you to follow a track that in the future comes out to be something very interesting. Always try to do a policy that gives you some sort of structure. So we have a vision, we want to reduce that much by that time, but also give you incentives. So if you do that by that time, you have a tax release, or so you give some incentive for the developers, but you also give the sign for the investors. When you put those 2 things together, then you have a very good chemistry in your policy that works. But I think the most important is something that Oman is already doing. And I'm impressed with that because, I talked to different ministers in different areas and they were singing the same song. So having everybody going together in the same direction with leadership is very important. You are doing that. And the second thing that you're doing very right is cooperation. Consult, listen. Consult not only within your peers in the government, but also consult with industry, consult with your population, consult with your youth. And that will make a big difference.
And now, since you mentioned youth, yesterday we had this session with youth, but
Yes.
I believe it's not enough.
No.
Can we expand this initiative so that we can reach basically bigger audience?
So first, I think research will play such an important role. And again, if you incentivize research for the youth with little things, you see some amazing results. So yesterday we were talking about a few things that can be done to inform into that system and into that process. One, reward the best. Reward their ideas. So put contests. If you put all of them together, call the investors, and the best project will be implemented. That is a super incentive. Second, put them to do on-job training in the different ministries so that they understand the different sides as grow into their profession. And I said that we have had people from all over the world doing internships, or we have the young professional program in ICAO. The countries can send people to ICAO to be doing on-job training. And that gives them this openness and exposure to the world. When they come back to Oman, they have so many new ideas, they can get so much more involved. But more than everything, tell that aviation is to be in, and that you can be whatever you want in aviation, because we need all the professions. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much. Highly appreciated. Now, my next speaker, well, basically, he is someone who is in R&D development, involved in policy, also formulations. His name is Dr. Right? Dr. Alejandro is the Director of Sustainable Bioenergy Research Consortium. I think 2 mics. SPRC at Haifa University of Science and Technology. The SPRC was established in 2011 and has as its founding members the Boeing Company, Etihad Airways, and UOP Honeywell, that together with Safran, GE, Refining, and Power Resources are spearheading research in the use of salt water and halophytes for the production of SAF. He is also working to establish the SAF industry in the UAE by focusing on the locally viable pathways, including power to liquid and synthetic fuels, and by working and collaborating with many stakeholders in the aviation industry. The biography, trust me, is much more longer, but I will allow Alejandro to start.
Thank you very much, Rashid, and thank you to the CAA for the invitation to be here. I will very briefly give you an overview of the types of activities that we have been doing in the UAE, and very focusing on the R&D aspect, but this is going to be a very high-level overview. Sorry. So there are many aspects related to sustainable aviation fuel that we many times don't realize. Throughout the sessions that we have been hearing during this forum, you can get a sense of the complexity that surrounds sustainable aviation fuel. Many different disciplines are involved. You have agriculture, you have energy, you have infrastructure, you have many different disciplines. And so when you're trying to work on a project related to sustainable aviation fuel, you end up having to talk to many different that have a very different vision of what is important for them. So this creates a significant difficulty for getting SAF projects off the ground. And so what you see here is, beyond the supply chain for producing a sustainable aviation fuel, there's many different variables that are involved. And you have to take all of these into account in order to be successful in bringing about a sustainable aviation fuel project. So what do we do when we consider research? In this region of the world, we have to look at the types of feedstocks that we have. In many places in this region, we don't have access to fresh water, or there's very limited access to fresh water. And we don't have arable land or fertile land, or very limited access to these resources. And so just by that fact, or those two facts, you don't have the capacity to produce biofuels, for example, or fuels that are produced in other parts of the world. And so we have to understand what is available here. Some of you have presented very interesting projects in terms of, for example, using municipal solid waste to bring the production of sustainable aviation fuel. And that is definitely one of the major areas that can be explored. However, if we consider the municipal solid waste that is available, for example, in the UAE, and if we consider the entirety of the municipal solid waste that is produced there, and if we were able to convert that into sustainable aviation fuel, and we were very, very efficient at doing that, we would only be able to produce around 5% of the overall jet fuel demand that the UAE has. And so even though it's a significant resource, and even though it is there, it is to be a very small part of the overall solution. The other thing is that municipal solid waste is already being used for other purposes. And so in many cases, there are projects that are already underway and that have been 10 years in the planning and commissioning phase to bring about infrastructure for producing electricity using municipal solid waste incineration. And so that de facto eliminates the potential for using gasification and potentially later either Fischer-Tropsch or gas fermentation to produce a sustainable aviation fuel. So there's a competition for the resources that are there, and we have to understand what that means. Another example in the case of feedstocks is what Rashid was mentioning. We have been working in the UAE through the Sustainable Bioenergy Research Consortium on the development of halophytic biomass. Halophytes are the plants that have roots in their soil. They're not aquatic plants, they're not algae, and that are able to grow with salt water in desert land. And so those of us who live in this region of the world are able to see examples of halophytes every day. Those are the plants that are in the coastal areas. They're next to the ocean. So these plants have the capacity to grow. They have a mechanism that allows them to deal with the salinity in the water. So we have a project that we call the Seawater Energy and Agriculture System. We have built a pilot facility back in 2016. We have been operating this pilot facility where we integrate 3 basic subsystems. We have seawater come in, we pump seawater inland, and then we use this seawater to feed an aquaculture farm where we grow fish or shrimp. As these animals grow, they generate waste, and this waste goes into the water. We have to change this water frequently. And what most aquaculture operations do around the world is that they take this water and they dump it back in the ocean in the hope that the waste will dilute in the body of water that the ocean represents. What we do is we take this wastewater and we use it as a liquid fertilizer, irrigate fields of halophyte plants. And in our case, we're using a very specific halophyte that is called Salicornia, and a very specific species of Salicornia that is called Salicornia bigelovii. And this plant has the capacity for producing tiny oil seeds. And these oil seeds contain about 30% oil. So you take the vegetable oil and you go through the HEFA process and produce a sustainable aviation fuel. The water that continues its path back to the ocean, we make it pass through our third subsystem, which is our halophyte agroforestry subsystem, where we cultivate mangroves. Mangroves are potentially the best known halophytes out there. This is a perennial plant, so we cultivate mangrove trees and we let them grow for 25, 30, 40 years. And potentially, if there is enough land that is dedicated to this, you heard examples from John just earlier, what is done in the pine forests of North America and Northern Europe, which is what they manage their forests in a silviculture scheme. So this is a potential to be done in the very, I would say mid to long-term future when cultivating these types of forests, a mangrove forest that grows with seawater. Now, having said this, we've invested 10 years in doing this research. We have proven that it works. We did a proof of concept flight back in 2019 with an Etihad Airways Boeing 787 that had GE engines. So all of our partners participated in that particular flight. And we flew from Abu Dhabi to Amsterdam, a commercial flight because this was a HEFA process. But what is the main problem here? Our pilot facility is built on 2 hectares of land where we have aquaculture, we have halophyte agriculture, and we have halophyte agroforestry. In order for us to be able to even scratch the surface of the jet fuel, using the example of municipal solid waste, we still need at least 10 or 20 years of continuous investment in halophyte plants to be able to even reach a decent level of production. What do I mean by that? If you look at the global production of canola oil, for example, which was mentioned just before, approximately 36 million hectares are used to produce canola today. Sunflower oil, which is another very big oil seed, they use approximately 26 million hectares. We have 2 hectares in Abu Dhabi. So just to give you a sense of the scale, this is a very big problem. Okay. Beyond that, of course, research has to be done on the technical performance and the safety of these fuels. This is research that is done so that any type of fuel that comes in the pipeline can be certified under the ASTM D7566 specification, so that it can become an ASTM D1655 fuel, essentially a jet fuel. And beyond that, we have Jane was mentioning the criteria that have been defined by ICAO. There has to be, there's a number of elements that need to be understood. For example, right now, there is no process to certify an LCAF fuel. And even if there are producers out there that are able to produce LCAF, they have no way of certifying it. So this is a big issue that needs to be resolved specifically for this region of the world, because many of the producers in this region of the world are actually ready to produce LCAF. I'm not going to go into the policy and institutional support, but we've heard a lot of the things that need to be considered in terms of policy. The UAE has just come out with a roadmap, and hopefully there will be another document coming along very soon. But just as an example, in the roadmap that the UAE has put out, the first principle is establishing the ambition. And the ambition has been set to produce 700 million liters of SAF by year 2030. This is approximately 6 to 7% of the demand, estimated demand in the year 2030 in the UAE. And it's going to take an investment of $7 to $9 billion. And is going to be, as I already mentioned, there are feasibility studies, and I'll just show you a couple of examples, that are looking into municipal solid waste as the feedstock. In that roadmap, they were also considering halophytes as part of the solution. But without a doubt, in this region of the world, and this goes back to the feedstocks that we need to analyze, in this region of the world, there's no question that power to liquids or synthetic fuels are the way to go. these are the scalable technologies, or the technologies that will allow you to go to scale much faster. And so we need to focus on those fuels, and we need to focus on the research that needs to happen so to bring those technologies to the commercial space and outside of the pilot or lab scales. And then again, there's also a need to do market and business development, because integrating these projects is not always easy. And so, we have to look into items such as carbon intelligence. What are the strategies that different aircraft operators use to have what I would call a smart carbon portfolio? So there are other elements that also need to be considered. I'll just close by saying that SAF is a reality. People are already producing it. ADNOC, for example, the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, just announced last week during the ADIPEC, one of the largest oil and gas exhibitions in the world. They announced that they are already certified to co-produce SAF. So they are already producing SAF. And there are a number of feasibility studies. One is, for example, Tadweer, the Center for Waste Management in Abu Dhabi, has launched 2 specific feasibility studies. One that will look to use the Fischer-Tropsch technology. So they're going to gasify municipal solid waste, and the syngas, they're going to use Fischer-Tropsch to turn it into a set of paraffins that can then be upgraded into a number of fuels. But they've also signed an agreement to do a feasibility study for using this same gasification technology, but then using the syngas and doing gas fermentation with a company called Tech. And then from gas fermentation, ethanol, and from ethanol, you can go to jet. And so there are projects underway in the UAE, and we are also working to establish, to continue the work in the UAE. So with that, thank you.
Thank you very much. Highly appreciated. Really very interesting. I have very short question and hopefully very short answer. How important the involvement of the academia, R&D in policy development?
I think that R&D and academia can inform policy development. One of our fellow panelists yesterday was making this very important point, which is that if you have science behind a specific policy that you enact, it makes things much easier. And so I think that that's the short answer.
Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Now the next speaker is a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, and he is also, beside academic, he is the founder and the director of the Nanotechnology Research Center at Sultan Qaboos University, Dr. Mohammed Al-Abdi. So please, and remember that we have lunch to catch. Thank you very much.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل وسلم على نبينا محمد. So the final session, probably you are tired, final day, and as promised, I made a long presentation. I will try to speak also to make this even longer. So bear with me, or don't. We have a moderator here. Still organizing. I appreciate Jane's presentation, very informative also with Alejandro, and I will look at this because I'm talking about research. I will look at this from a different perspective, more into what to expect from research and what we expect from research and what research can do. So a bit of a different flavor to the talks that we had so far. I hope that it would add a bit of information in there. Okay. So before I go through the presentation, I'd like to talk a bit about the Nanotechnology Research Center. We was established in 2017. Before that, we were a chair in nanotechnology, specifically for water desalination. So we began from water treatment and desalination, and we moved to other applications. We have quite a few different areas of research, and we have a very good number of projects also in the pipeline as well. And because we are a research center in Sultan Qaboos University, we really care about capability building. We care about the students, researchers, young researchers, even old researchers as well. In the Nanotechnology Research Center, we have 3 different programs. We began with water treatment and desalination, and we moved on energy applications, oil and gas, and renewables as well. And so far, and since 2017, we have done, I believe, a very good job so far. We have our workshops that we do, our courses in nanotechnology and the applications of nanotechnology. So far, we published more than 85 papers in different applications. We have 4 patent applications. We stopped for a bit because we see that papers are more basically appreciated more than patents. So that's one of the things that I don't know if we still believe in it or not, but yeah, papers maybe have more value than patents. We have services and other technologies as well. As for the project, what I'm going to talk about, of course, I will talk about research itself and sustainable energy or sustainable fuel. But my focus is on the research aspect rather than the sustainable fuel itself. And when I was informed about this, I remembered 8 years ago we had a high-level meeting with many ministers talking about, at that time, disruptive technologies. So basically, of course, we have now the 4th industrial chain, we have future technologies with so many names, with so many definitions. At the time, we were talking about disruptive technologies, and we were talking about renewable energy, which is has a very big impact for renewable energy. But even in that time, and this was in 2018, we didn't really talk about green hydrogen, or, well, of course, the CCUS that would come, that brought the green hydrogen. We were talking about the conventional renewable energy, if I may call it that, solar energy, wind, and all of those. But really, it is because it is called disruptive technology. We don't know what's coming next. We are projecting, we are predicting, we are thinking, okay, at 2030 we will have this, and at 2040 we have that, but we have no idea. Things will change. 10 years ago, we were talking about CSP, concentrated solar power, specifically for desalination, and it was a big thing. But until now, there is no breakthrough because still photovoltaic is still the big thing. And we expect a lot from research in that regard. We expect research for the selection and optimization of the feedstock. We expect research to be forefront of the catalysis for the production, for the process. And we have a lot of faith on research for what is coming after the production of the sustainable fuel. It doesn't stop at the sustainable fuel. What is the impact later on? And so what is different with sustainable fuel and what these disruptive technologies is, they require a combination of many disciplines, multidisciplinary. We need the engineers, we need the science, we need probably the political as well, the legislators. All of them, they have to sit at the same table and discuss freely because everybody plays part in all of this. And the other thing was, of course, with respect to research itself and academic, it's also different because usual conventional teaching and research is not going to cut it. What we need more collaborative. It is built on knowledge rather than on the resources. So before it was resources, we have many things, a lot of resources and we are combining things together. For this time, we require a lot of knowledge that we don't really know. And it's also very volatile. What we have now will be different tomorrow, it will be different in a year or two. The big research centers, academics, groups that are working, producing very well now, another group will come in a year or two and will overshadow them. It's the game. So, and this is what usually I put for nanotechnology. It's true for all kinds of research. What we want is the application. Everybody wants the application. We want the sustainable aviation fuel. We want biofuel. We want whatever we want. We cannot jump there. We need to begin from somewhere before that. And most of the time with this, we begin with modeling and simulation because it is the fastest and the cheapest. We cannot jump into building new polymers, non-metallics, semiconductors and all of those. We need to begin with modeling. Whatever we achieve in modeling, we can synthesis and fabrication, and from there we can go to characterization to see if we've done it well, and finally into the application. That route is very long, very time consuming, and whatever you see most of the time in the news, it's over here in the modeling, and they will tell you very beautiful things, 100%, 200% increase, when in reality it's just a model in a computer that we have no idea how we can even get to. It's very important that if we want the application, we need to think about the whole process. And with respect to Oman, of course, I'm not really the best one to talk about. We had big people who talked about this yesterday and today. But this is very important because Oman has a very good place to play, and it can play in sustainable fuel, biofuel and aviation fuel. Because of its the renewable energy, what I want to probably is we have our own unique challenges, and with these unique challenges we can come up with new ways of doing things. One of the challenges is that we have been talking times is produced water, water that comes from the oil industry, and if we can even touch on that, get 10% of that, it will be great. For the time being, definitely we have Dr. Zakiya there, the expert. It's very, very difficult. I really hope that we can do something on this. And of course, for collaboration, we are in the middle of everywhere. We can bring people together. We can collaborate together. Don't know what's happening. For sustainable fuel and biofuel in Oman, I've done this very short work from Scopus and Web of Science. As you can see, we have very, very low number of publications of research that we do. Saudi Arabia is much better than us. They are, I think, number 32. We are number 64 in the world. And you can see the difference in publication. With respect to who publishes, I'm from SQU, so I'd say yes, SQU is the main publisher. And we have only a few programs that promote and fund research in SQU. What I found is from this is we have one big group in SQU that is producing more than 70% of all the research in Oman, which is very good, but also not really that good. The other thing is when we look at the whole aviation and what is the full process, you will see that there is a lot of things that we can work on. Companies, policies, and all of that. We cannot go through all of those. We need people who will sit down and will swift through those and make sure that, okay, things are, where are the hanging fruits, as they say, right? The low hanging fruits. Where is he? And where can we get the fastest gain in the shortest time, while also working on other things. Nobody can work on all of these at the same time simultaneously. We need to pick a route. We need to pick one of those, three of those. We need a lot of this for the researchers, for the centers, for whoever academic students, to at least give us more ideas, and then we will come back and go for it. And this is where we come, and this I saw also earlier, the technology readiness level. So actually we have a lot of technologies, as you've seen there, we have a lot of things to talk about. Unfortunately, very few are in the TRL9 or 8. They are not ready for the industry. Some of them are. Unfortunately, they are not until now. They are not really economical. So we need to go back to the previous TRLs to make sure that we can make it economical. And this is one of the case studies that we have, which is my colleague, my friend, Prof. Ala, who is in the advisory board of the Nanotechnology Center. So what he began in 2011 on producing biofuels from waste date seeds. And then he moved on of trying to produce biodiesel from other things. And recently, with Muwasalat, they tested some of that biofuel on running one of the buses of Muwasalat, which was a very successful endeavor. But he didn't only focus on that, he also worked on trying to make a catalyst from date seeds as well to produce the biodiesel. So the pits are used as a catalyst and part to produce the biodiesel. And also we made more of added value from producing, for example, of salt ketel. So it's not only the biodiesel, but also the other additives or anything that we can produce. This finally is one of also the studies of mapping policies and future needs. Of course, I put those because my name is there, right? Part of the thing. And one of the things that I believe that Jane really stressed on, and I wholeheartedly believe in, is collaboration. And this is one of the we are proud of in the Nanotechnology Research Center. We are proud of the collaboration that we had, and it played a big role in our success. We've worked with people from 22 different countries since 2017, so this is only 5 years. With 22, we've worked with more than 150 academics and researchers, and we have worked with many ministries and so far 7 major companies in Oman. And I will end my talk with the future directions that I see, and probably you will agree with me. We need diversification of feedstock. We have a lot of feedstock. We still don't know which one is best. So there is a lot of research going on, and there will be more research going on in this, because it is the main factor of it. If we don't have this, we don't work on this, we will not work on it. We need more advanced conversion technologies. We need to talk about CCU as well, sustainable cultivation, energy efficiency, and what's very important also we need to think about is education and workforce development. We are beginning with this in Oman. We know that it's important. We are serious about it, and therefore we need capability building, and we need it fast. And with this, I end my talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Muhammad. Because of the limited time, you will be free without any questions from my side. I would like to invite my last speaker, Al Hassan. He asked me not to introduce him, but I think it's quite important to say a few words about him. He is the lead scientist with the Technology Strategy and Planning Department at Aramco, Saudi Aramco. Yes. He will be talking about the Archie initiative, which is basically how research led to the creation of the LCAF. Thank you very much. Please.
الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. Last presentation, last session, but I promise you it's going to be interesting. This is not a technical presentation. This is a story. And they told me I have 10 minutes, but I hope as I move along, you will be too excited. You will give me 5 more minutes before we break for lunch. So this is the Archie initiative and how basic research led to the creation of LCAF. It's just a story to give you an example of how you can use research to impact and influence policy. And the story will capture some of the things that my fellow panelists discussed before me. So the Archie Initiative is a global pioneering initiative. It aims to estimate greenhouse gas emissions and trace those emissions throughout the energy supply chain. So why did we basically establish this initiative? Now, as you know, after the Paris Agreement in 2016, there was a lot of climate change discussions, and you can argue that climate change became the #1 topic discussed globally at the time. But there was decision makers did not have enough information and data to basically do what we call informed decisions. And some of them were generalization, overestimations, and you could argue that they were kind of shooting in the dark. So we started in 2016. We wanted to basically close these gaps. So we wanted to build an industry-academia collaboration, which has been emphasized today. And we also wanted to collect and put together a collection of public and commercial data sources together in one place where people can go to and basically look at the necessary data that they're looking for. As we move along, between 2018 and 2020, few studies came out about certain energy sources, emission studies that are focusing on certain areas or certain regions, but there was global view. So we wanted to basically do studies that basically focus on the global industry of a certain product, not just a regional focus or a country focus, etc. So we started our research and we published our first paper in 2018. Between 2020 and 23, there were no effective communication of these studies. So you will do the study, you'll publish, but most people don't read technical papers. They don't know what you did unless they go and read your work. And there was no platform where people can go to and find all this information. So that's why we have the Archie Initiative today, which was officially launched this year in May. Now, this is the group of collaborators that we have today under the initiative. This basically means our scientists and researchers come from these organizations, and they are the leading experts in life cycle analysis, which is a methodology that most people are using today to estimate emissions. And when it comes to the data we use, we mostly use public data, but in some cases, we have to use some commercial data providers. And those are some of the providers that we use to collect data from. We have Wood Mackenzie, EcoInvent, Kepler, CROUTS. Some of them are focusing on oil and gas, some of them focusing on shipping routes, and see information about vessels, about how much crude is being moved from one point to the next, etc. But again, the public data we collected is about 70% of the total. So we have about 30% from commercial data sources. Now, what we aim to do is we have 5 main objectives. We want to trace energy emissions. So basically, we want to tell you and show you that emissions of products from this point, it moves to this point, it moves to this point until it reaches the final destination. So we capture the supply chain of the energy source for that particular product. We want to estimate the emissions. We want to promote transparency by making this data and information public. We want to foster by including more and more people under the initiative. And finally, we hope that decision makers will use this data to basically make data-driven decisions. Okay, so in summary, what we have done so far is we analyzed operations for the oil industry globally at this point. We analyzed transporting the crude from one point to the next. We also analyzed refining operations and final distribution. Now, apart from distribution, each one of those is a single project, meaning a single article. And we spend on each of one from 1.5 to 2 years to finish, from start, the moment we start the research to the point of publication. So this work started in 2016, so it took us about 7-8 years to do, right? And this is the number, some of the highlights of what we've done. We've studied 96 countries, about 98% of global production at the time we did the study back in 2016. We have more than 900 public data sources. We have around 500 refineries, and finally 9,000 oil fields. Now, this is a selected group of publications that we have done so far. We have 3 major publications that I just discussed, and we always target high impact journals for high impact, basically influence or use of our research. So we publish in Science, we publish in Nature and some of its family, Nature Climate Change, Nature Communications, etc. And as you can see, we started in 2018, and almost every year we publish 1 or 2 at least. And this is the group under the initiative. And our latest paper just came out 2 weeks ago, which looks into the details of emissions coming from transporting the crude from the field to the refinery gate. Now, today, we all know that LCAF is a CORSIA eligible fuel. What you probably don't know is LCAF was created and designed based on the research I just talked about. So in 2018, late 2017, and Jane knows this, and some of my colleagues here were part of this discussion as well, and in ICAO, we have members of our team who became members at the Fuel Task Group, which is basically the subgroup under CAPE that discusses the technical discussions for SAF, LCAF, etc., where they set the standards, the baseline, they do the calculations, they do the emission estimations, etc. So we came in and we were able to use the research that we published for the last 7-8 years to introduce what is called today LCAF. It wasn't an easy journey. It took a lot of time, a lot of discussion, and the people who were part of this, especially Jane, understand that this process, as she just mentioned, that global acceptance is not easy. It takes a lot of time and effort to get that kind of acceptance. But what really helped us is the fact that we have these publications in peer-reviewed journals to give us the credibility of the science and information that we have. Now, this is the first main slide in this presentation, but what I would like to show you now is what Jane and others discussed just a few minutes ago about outreach and communications. So we were, of course, happy that we managed to publish. We were happy that we managed to engage in the ICAO discussion with CORSIA, SAF, and LCAF. But if we don't have an easy way to show these results and this research to anyone, not just the experts in the field, it will probably not reach the full potential. So I'm happy to say that in May this year, we launched the website for the initiative. So this is the main page of the website. It's www.archieinitiative.org. And as you can see, you can read more about the initiative, the contributors. You can go to the publication page if you're interested in the technical discussion about the papers I just discussed. And if you, this is some highlight numbers about the research. If you go down, you see some of the features that the initiative, the website is going to show you. But the most important thing is the Data Explorer. So this is basically where we brought everything that we've done in research in this tool or this map, which basically shows you the global map for the oil industry. This map will show you the carbon intensity for the oil industry globally at 4 different levels. You can see the carbon intensity at the country level, at the refinery level, at the crude oil level, and finally at the oil field level. Now, only countries that produce or refine oil are part of this discussion. So this is the supply chain for oil from well to pump. So it does not include combustion, which is what people refer to as Scope 3. So let me just give you a quick example. If I click into the United States, for example, first you will see the shipping routes of US crudes, imports and exports. Second, you see the white lines. These are the pipelines in the United States. Third, you see the panel which will give you the carbon intensity portfolio for the American oil industry. So basically, what this tells you is the oil industry in the US on average has 101 kilogram of CO2 per barrel. And then the breakdown is right below. So this is refining, around 50, oil production upstream, around 47, and 4 is from transport. And if we go down, this is the average carbon intensity for the products produced in US refineries. So you can see you have the carbon intensity for gasoline, for diesel, for jet, and bunker fuel. And if you go down further, you can see more information. So this is the portfolio for the oil industry in America. And we have around 32 crude grades. We have around 611 oil fields, about 87 refineries, and 56 terminals. Now, this is the first level, which is country level. If I zoom in, you will start seeing more information. So these are the additional level of information. If I click on the red icons here, which is a refinery. So this is a Sutherland refinery. If I click on it, you'll see the portfolio for that specific refinery, and you will see the crude that's being refined in this refinery. And since this one looks like a simple refinery, it has only one crude. If I click into Sweeney, for example, you will see that this specific refinery is buying crude from different countries. And you can trace back to the crude that's being bought by that refinery and refined there. You can also see it in the panel here. If you click view more. So these are the same crude that you see in the map. Now, the average intensity is 98. The breakdown of the refinery unit is here. In addition to the crude, the average of the crude intake, which is the upstream intensity coming from the crude you're buying from the market. Now, the next thing is I can click on the crude itself. So if I click on this, I have the carbon intensity for West Canada blend, and I have the same information. If you zoom in, you see that this blend is coming from all these different fields. So these are oil fields. And you can see here it says this blend is coming from 14 different oil fields, which takes me to the last level of information, which is the oil field itself. So if I click here, it will give me the same level of information, carbon intensity for this specific oil field. So as you can see, we brought the research that we've done and scattered in different journals and different articles into one platform, which is easy to see and visualize, and hopefully easy to understand, and hopefully also will be used by people such as yourself, industry, policymakers, public, etc., and use this information to make decisions, strategies, etc. And this is what we think the role of comes in, where it's our responsibility to make it easy for the non-expert to understand what we did in order for them to use it in a beneficial way. This is my presentation. If I just go back, this is basically the website is www.archieinitiative.org. Thank you very much. And I will be, if you have more questions later on, you're more than welcome to come and approach me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Al-Hassan. I believe that you earned the extra 5 minutes for the talk. And make sure during lunch to sit on my table because I have a lot of questions for you. Do we have any question from the audience? I can take only one question. I see only one hand. I don't see the other hand.
It was a beautiful presentation on all sides there. One thing for the LCAF side, and that we've seen by the flare mitigation piece, this is a bit of a technical question, so I don't know how it will go down, but we've got lots of academia up there to figure it out from side of things. With the flare side, when we're producing the flare gas through a solid oxide fuel cell, for instance, the CORSIA standards and the regulations for the pathway state that we have to, take whatever that hydrocarbon basis from the front end is where we start a process. Now, when we look at a solid oxide fuel cell, for instance, and we have the hydrogen or the water coming from the anode exhaust, technically we can qualify it as an e-fuel basis from there. So do we see a split in pathways in an LCAF basis where you could actually have an e-fuel from an initial LCAF basis? Does that make sense? No problem. So in terms of your LCAF, so if you have LCAF and we're producing the methane into a solid oxide fuel cell, so that has one pathway. That's, yeah. So from the anode exhaust of the fuel cell, we know that we can take the CO2 and the water in that anode exhaust and then move that across into a pathway to create e-fuel. So do we see that there's a basis that we can actually split the CORSIA standards within there to have an LCAF basis and an e-fuel basis from the one pathway?
I think this is a question more for Jane, not for me, because it's kind of a technical question, but it's into the policy discussion. So I don't know if this is, I don't think it's currently part of the approved pathways, but I don't know, this will be, if it's discussed within ICAO, they will decide whether it's approved or not, right? So, but I don't know how it's going to be looked at. So I don't know if Jane would like to say something about it. I'm not sure.
So this is where we will take the CO2 to start with. Will that even interfere if we are classifying in SAF or LCAF, or how the policies will play? Probably we'll have to have other categories in the future. Right now, I'll tell you, does it really matter if we classify one way or another way, as far as the end results and the benefits are clear? I'm not sure. But it is an interesting question, because those things will, as we have more production, as we have different pathways, etc., those questions will rise. So for the region, we can see how important will be the capture of CO2 from the very beginning of the process, or during the middle of the process, or if you consider the entire process. If you want to do e-fuels and you need the CO2, in what stage you take. But at the end of the day, is the end product will have a life cycle. The end product will have a consideration of the entire process and its results from beginning to end. And that, I think, that will be the most important thing. But interesting consideration. I think we have not had that discussion before in CAPE, because we are also expecting a little bit more maturity for some of the processes on the side of LCAF to come to the attention of the experts in the group. I hope I addressed some of your...
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we have enough time during lunch to explore the topic further. I would like to thank my speakers, Jane, Alejandro, Hassan, and Mohammed Al-Abri. I would like to thank you for your patience. We took, I think, 10 minutes from your lunch time. Rashid, are you... What is Rashid? Yeah. Right. So, thank you very much. I think we can get down.
نشكر الدكتور راشد الحجري وجميع المتحدثين على مساهماتهم القيمة وإثراء الجلسة بمعرفتهم وتجاربهم. كانت النقاشات غاية في الإثراء، وقد استهدفوا مواضيع هامة حول تطوير واستخدام وقود الطيران المستدام المنخفض الكربون والطاقات النظيفة على الصعيدين المحلي والعالمي. نتطلع بشدة إلى متابعة هذا الحوار الثري والبناء في المستقبل، ومواصلة تبادل الأفكار والتجارب لتعزيز هذا المجال الحيوي والمهم. نرجو منكم الآن البقاء في أماكنكم إلى حين البدء في الجلسة الختامية.